Got to get the dog shot in there. I can't cut in until we have the dog in a headset. How are you, everybody? It is a Sunday. It's a live edition of the Sports Rush. I am Brett Rump. Hopefully, you know that by now. But if you're new to the show, welcome and make sure you do subscribe. Make sure you give us a thumbs up and like this channel. Also, I've got the comments open. I'm going to do my best to get to any comments that we might have. Already, we've got a big hello from Ryan Eaton, our buddy up in LaGrange. But if you'd like to talk anything Fort Wayne, Northeast Indiana, or even Indiana sports, we would love to hear from you and a couple of people we're going to be hearing from during this particular show. The judge, Phil Houk, host of Fighting Irish Preview, and he is going to jump on with us because he has been following this Notre Dame football season, which started by the Irish firmly backing themselves up against the wall and then trying to figure out how do we salvage the season? Well, there was only one way to do it, and that was to run the table through the final 10 games of the year, and the Irish have just about gotten to the finish line. I think Notre Dame at this point has proven they are worthy of being in the college football playoff, but I still think a loss is going to cost them that ticket. So they still have to, go. Their playoffs started back in mid-September. That's when Notre Dame's playoff run really began. Now, for other teams, they've got some room for margin for error, but Alabama, of course, lost. That was a costly loss for Alabama. You had Pitt losing to Notre Dame. That basically takes Pitt out of any kind of possible scenario. I I look at it and I think if you really truly want the best teams in the country competing for a national championship, Notre Dame should be among that group. But a lot of people wrote off Notre Dame because they weren't good enough to beat Miami and Texas A&M. Well, look what those two teams have done this year. Miami's been a pretty solid football team, and Texas A&M, there's a debate on whether or not they are number 2 or number 3 in the country. You know what I don't get? I don't get why there is not more debate on number 1. Everybody kind of just agrees. Ohio State earned that spot, perhaps because of the national championship last year. And it's like when you're king of the mountain, you stay on the top of the mountain until someone knocks you off. But no, Texas A&M, although they got the scare of the season and somehow overcame a 30-3 halftime deficit. Yeah, if you're following this, and it actually might have been good news for Notre Dame because they want the teams that beat them to keep winning. But Texas A&M was down to South Carolina at the half, 30-3, and came back in the second half, outscored South Carolina 28-0, and won the game 31-30 to stay unbeaten. But wow, that's an impressive comeback. Indiana was sluggish in the first half as well, but a sluggish Indiana still takes the lead into the locker room. I mean, that's just how good Indiana is, that they could play a very poor half of football by Indiana standards and still go to the locker room with a lead over a conference opponent. And I know Wisconsin's not had a good year, and it shouldn't have been that close, but nobody plays perfect football through an entire 12-game schedule. And Indiana did not play perfect football in the first half. And so Indiana goes to the locker room ahead by only 3, and it was tied at one point in the second quarter, 7-7. They're up 10-7 at the half, but it was all Indiana in the second half. Hoosiers remain unbeaten. They've only got one hurdle between them and an undefeated regular season heading to the Big Ten championship game, and that's the rival, the Purdue Boilermakers, which I don't know how much of a rivalry it is. Right? I mean, it's a rivalry. But the problem is, instead of two good teams every year, you end up with one that seems to have the momentum and the other one that is down. And it's always somebody's trying to knock off the other, either costing them a bowl bid or it'd be fun if it was two good football programs that finish off the season against one another. where both teams could afford a loss because you're playing a good opponent, and a loss isn't going to knock you out of whatever it is you're playing for at that point in the season. That's what I would love to see. I'd love to see Purdue and Indiana both be good football teams. I don't favor one over the other. I want to see everybody in Indiana perform well, and I'd like to see Purdue kind of build that program back because it really took, to me, a downhill turn under the previous coach, Ryan Walters. All right, so got a lot to talk about. Judge Phil Houk to talk Notre Dame, and then Dylan Sinn coming along to talk Indiana, Purdue, football, basketball, you name it. Today we've got almost an Indiana Purdue doubleheader in basketball. And speaking of both teams being good, and we wish that for football, we've got it in basketball. I said before the season started, this Indiana team is going to be a good 3-point shooting team. They are a good 3-point shooting team, maybe even excellent. They're not elite because to be elite, you have to get measured up against a team like Purdue that is just unbelievably exceptional. But Indiana can shoot the rock. And Indiana is they're going to win a lot of games. You know why? They've got this competitiveness, they've got a toughness. Um, it's just something we've not seen at Indiana. We saw a team that kind of went through the motions. And then if it didn't work out for Indiana, it wasn't their fault. It was your fault. The fans were bad. Whatever the circumstances. This Indiana basketball team, they're a kind of group that's saying, hey, we want to pull together and we want to do something special here. The coach seems to be doing a great job. I think Coach DeVries so far has done really well, but you've got some leadership, obviously, with guys that have been around a while. You've got guys that have accepted roles, which is very difficult to do. That is really tough when in a day and age of transfers, and you've got these guys that do really well as the big fish in a small pond at a mid-major, and then they come into Indiana and they're one of 8 or 9 guys that transfers in, and all 8 or 9 were the biggest fish in the pond, and now all of a sudden they've got to learn how to share the food supply. It can be very challenging. You're dealing with egos. You're dealing with guys that want to end their careers with a bang and not with a little bit of a whimper sitting at the end of the bench being known as part of the bench mob. And so it can be very challenging in this day and age of transfers, especially when a coach comes in and has to assemble an entire roster, because you're not going to play an entire roster. Although Indiana does play 10 deep, that's challenging. And so you've got the egos you've got to take care of. You've got everybody that's got to buy into the team more than me, and the system and their role in that system. And so far, what I've seen with Coach DeVries in Indiana, love it. Lamar Wilkerson, he's come in, shown no reservation or no lack of confidence playing at this level. He's come in scoring 22 points a game. You've got Wilkerson hitting 58% of his threes. Tucker DeVries hitting 55% of his threes. Are you hearing this, Indiana fans? You've got a team that can actually shoot the basketball. How many years has it been that Indiana's been complaining, we don't have shooters. We don't have shooters. We have no 3-point shooters. Trey Galloway was the best 3-point shooter on the team a couple of years ago. I mean, that's how bad it got. Although Trey Galloway's playing pretty well in the G League. But Wilkerson at 22 a game, Tucker DeVries at 19 a game. How about back-to-back hundos for the Indiana Hoosiers? They put 100 on Marquette. followed it up with another 100. I mean, this is a team that's averaging 99.7 points per game while hitting 48% of their three-point shots. Individually, a lot of teams aren't going to have a single player anywhere in the neighborhood of 48%, and Indiana is shooting 48% as a team. They are, and this isn't a fluke. This isn't like, oh, they're 5 for 11. No, this is 38 out of their first 80 three-point tries. They're also, you can tell they're good shooters because this is always a statistic that stands out if you've got a team that's been assembled with good shooters, is what do they do at the free throw line? And they are 82.1% as a team at the free throw line, which is insane. 75, 76% is considered really a good team average. Upper 70s is exceptional. It's among the better teams in the country. Lower 70s, you're probably slipping bottom half of the NCAA. But you're in the 80s, you got a chance to lead the country in free throw shooting. Indiana is faux real. And so it's kind of exciting to watch what's happening with Indiana. Now, we mentioned it's doubleheader tonight. Indiana opens it up 5:30. They'll be taking on Incarnate Word, and then Purdue will try to make its case that it's the number one team in the country and maybe earn that back this week when they take on Akron, and that's a solid mid-major program. Don't take them for granted. Akron, similar to what Purdue faced when they took on Oakland. And so that will be a game that takes place at 7:30. So you got 5:30 and 7:30, Indiana and Purdue, both coming up back to back. I think they're both on the Big Ten Network back to back. So pretty cool stuff. But yeah, there's plenty to talk about when we get into college basketball. Purdue Fort Wayne, they've got a tough road trip this week. We'll talk a little more about them. They go to Utah and they go to St. Louis on the same trip. In fact, they're taking off right now, heading up to Detroit to catch a flight to Salt Lake City. They'll be in Salt Lake City through Wednesday, and then they're going to catch a flight to St. Louis. They'll get into St. Louis Wednesday evening. They're going to then play the Billikens on Friday night and then eventually come home. And actually, this year, they're going to be spending the entire week of Thanksgiving at home, which is, I don't know, I've done this 14 years. I don't know that I've ever had the entire week of Thanksgiving at home. But what about the Purdue Fort Wayne women's basketball team knocking off their parent club? I mean, this would be like well, now they're the Noblesville Boom. I was going to call them the Mad Ants. This would be like the Noblesville Boom knocking off the Indiana Pacers. This was Purdue Fort Wayne, mid-major, satellite campus for Purdue University, West Lafayette. And they somehow got Purdue to come into their place. And I know the twist here is that Purdue agreed to come as a 2-year deal. So this was set up a year and a half, 2 years ago. And the idea was Purdue would get a home game, and then they would return the favor and come into Fort Wayne because Jordan Poole was out of Fort Wayne Snyder High School, a commit to go to Purdue. And so it would give her a chance to play in front of her family and friends here in the Summit City. They ink the contract, and then after the freshman year, Jordan Poole transfers. So they don't have the Fort Wayne player. They're contracted to come here and still play. They do, and Purdue Fort Wayne knocks them off. And who hits the winning shot? Well, a very Jordan Poole-like player for Purdue Fort Wayne. Any of you that saw Jordan Poole play, smaller guard, known for three-point range, and it was Riley Bess, a freshman for Purdue Fort Wayne, that had the sidestep three-pointer with 5 seconds left to bury Purdue 68-67. And then Purdue Fort Wayne came up with a defensive stand to preserve the win. So huge for Maria Marchesano. Now, I will just slip this in real quick. I'm not going to dwell on it. I don't want to dwell on it because I don't want anybody to get ideas that doesn't already have ideas. Purdue Fort Wayne may have won a game and lost a coach in the process. I'll just say that, I mean, I don't think I'm the first that's bringing this up, but someone's done a really, really impressive job building a program here in Fort Wayne. And if your name is associated with that campus and you didn't notice, you're not doing your job. That's all I'll say. All right, we got to talk some football. Notre Dame, backs against the wall. All they got to do is keep winning. And that's pretty much all they've had to do since, well, you go way back to the beginning of the season. Back-to-back losses, Miami and Texas A&M by a grand total of 4 points. And they should have actually won one, which means we'd be talking about Notre Dame like we're talking about Texas A&M now. Instead, Notre Dame is being talked about as the team that can't afford another loss, and Texas A&M is a team that's being debated as whether they are number 1, 2, or 3 in the country. But that's what happens, the difference of 1 point. But let's talk Notre Dame football with the man who knows football at Notre Dame inside and out. It is the Judge, host of Fighting Irish Preview, the Judge Phil Houk. How are you, Judge?
I'm doing great, Brett, and it's good to be on with you. We haven't talked for a hot minute anyway.
Well, I can say this: your hair looks great.
That's an inside joke, I know.
Well, I know you've been traveling, following the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. They got an impressive win yesterday. Before we talk about the bigger picture, let's talk about yesterday. That was a game that obviously had a lot of hype around it, some strange comments from Coach Narduzzi of Pitt about this game. But ultimately, Notre Dame, I think they're at the point now they've got to make statements, and I think they made one.
Well, they absolutely did. Pat Narduzzi's comments notwithstanding, they were unusual to say the least. And they probably actually did provide just a tiny amount more motivation for the Irish yesterday. Narduzzi, of course, during the week said, well, it doesn't really matter if we lose this because we're in the ACC conference. And of course, he's been a critic for years about the fact that Notre Dame's not in a conference. But he says, we're still in a conference and we can still win no matter what happens in that game. So blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I think I was at the game, of course. I think the Pittsburgh fans took their cue from their coach because they didn't think it was a very important game either because they stopped cheering about 2 minutes into the game and they were all gone at halftime. So go figure.
Well,
anyway, Notre Dame did make a statement yesterday. They still got some things to clean up, but there are so many weapons on that team, Brett, explosive weapons, and they got some issues on the offensive side of the ball. We can talk about those, but the defense is just playing great. Has really started about the second half of the Purdue game, which was game 3 of the season. They've been as good as anybody in the country. So, there's some hope there. Every week is an elimination week, and that's the way I guess Marcus Freeman likes it because that's exactly the way it was for Notre Dame last year. They had to win every single game to get into the playoffs, and that's what they've had to do this year. And it looks like it may happen because their last 2 games are very winnable.
Yeah, you don't want to say anything that could sound like a Pat Narduzzi comment, but you're right.
We respect our opponents.
Yeah, these 2 games are very winnable games. And by the way, those Pitt fans, they probably got tired, Judge. They're not used to having college game day in town, and they had to get up extra early to be out there and cheer. So they had done all their cheering at like 9 o'clock in the morning.
They had, and let me tell you, it was just a great day yesterday. I mean, here I am. I'm down on the field before the game, hobnobbing with Jerome Bettis. The bus was there.
I thought you were going to say you were petting the dog or something like that.
No, I didn't run into the dog, but it's a great city. It's a beautiful stadium. I'd been there before, but it had been a few years, and I'd been there as a fan about 15 years ago. That was the last time I'd been at Pitt. But really a good show, and they take good care of the media there. I'll say that, and I'm a connoisseur of that by this time of my career, as are you. and it was a great day for Notre Dame. Right down to Notre Dame singing the alma mater a cappella after the game down on the field to a virtually empty stadium, except for about the 6 or 7 thousand Notre Dame fans that were there.
Nice to see Tay Johnson get
Yeah.
a pick six. Tay Johnson got forced into the lineup, and I know the coaches were high on him, and I think they were trying to figure out where they could get him in somewhere because they thought he might be an impact player. I think there was an early injury. He ended up playing, and then you can't take him off the field. The guy just continues to make plays, and Notre Dame's defense has been a better defense since he's joined them.
Oh yeah. When Tay first got there, his forte was he didn't play safety in high school, but the coaching staff immediately liked him last year, but he got injured really early on, so they realized, well, the best course is to redshirt him. So he didn't play at all last year. And but the buzz early on him was this kid is going to be a player, and he is a player. He is a really good player. I didn't know a lot about him other than I read the stories about him, what he was doing in high school, but I didn't know how that was going to translate to the Notre Dame level. But you look at him as an athlete. I look at him and he's lean, he's long, he's obviously he's athletic, but he can cover a lot of space, and he is so quick to breaking on the ball. His instincts are just over the top. It's been great to watch his development. It's been great to know that he's one of the prides of Fort Wayne out there on the field for the Fighting Irish. And he was in our interview last night. And I got to talk to him a little bit, and I talked to him. I would have loved to talk to him about Fort Wayne, but in that kind of group setting, you don't ask personal questions. But he talked about film study, and he also, the main thing he talked about in answer to my questions was how much more confident and comfortable he is today as opposed to game one. He's now started 10 games for Notre Dame. Game one, he was the little brother in the lineup. I think it may have been the words he used it, and the new guy who's just learning. But now it's a team effort all the way. They love what his play, and that pick six he had last night. He was shot out of a cannon, broke on that football, and he was gone to the end zone. He's a good player, and he's got 3 more years of eligibility after this if he
Yeah,
lasts that long.
it's funny because when he was first out there, and this is normal for a young player, you feel like they're just trying to do their job, not make mistakes, not get
Yeah.
exposed. But now it looks like he's out there with the confidence to go out and make plays. Like the game has kind of changed, and it didn't take long for him. He's got the instincts, but like you said on that particular play, um, knowing that you can take a read and a jump and get to the ball, and there's no chance that it's going to get completed and you'll be out of position. I mean, those are things you have to see and experience before you can actually do them, and that's where he's at right now.
I can't see enough good things, and I know it's not just me because I was hearing from the other guys in the press uh, area, media pals who are not from Fort Wayne, uh, for over a year now about how good they thought he was going to be. What they kept hearing about him, and he's a player, man. He's a player, and when you team him up with a player like a Don Schuler at the other safety, Notre Dame is just stacked at safety, and they've got Devonta Smith. They've got, well, he's playing more nickel, but Luke Talich. They're strong at that position. Jaden Osbury can play some safety, and Marcus Stroman. Uh, the defense is playing really, really well. And one of the keys is when you have that strength in the middle of the defense, like they have with Schuler and Tay Johnson, it just kind of all emanates out from there. They're the keys.
Got to talk offense with Notre Dame, and I keep thinking perhaps it's because Notre Dame lost I think the primary national focus. Everybody still watches Notre Dame, but the talk has been IU, Texas A&M, Ohio State. But Jeremiah Love, how close is he to being, do you think, a really legitimate Heisman contender? Because I think he should be discussed and debated.
Yeah, well, I think he is being discussed starting round about a couple weeks ago, and mainly last week is when that started. Uh, with his 99, what he had a 98 yarder, and he's just
He's got a
been
knack for
electric.
that. He's, I
He's
mean,
be
just, but that's the thing is, to me, it's not so much just if you look at the season stats, it's the impact he has on games because he seems to break some runs and seems to make some plays when Notre Dame's trying to separate or they're trying to quiet somebody else's momentum. That to me, in that case, the 90 some yard run was when Notre Dame was backed up and it seemed like they were really pinned and in trouble, and he just breaks a long one.
Yeah. Well, and it's a highlight reel with him. And that's exactly what happened yesterday. You talk about quieting the crowd. That's kind of what I talked about. I think maybe off the top of this discussion with you, Brett. But uh, he was shot out of a cannon last night for a 56-yard touchdown in the first quarter. Made a spin move like a hockey player on ice. I mean, it was just unbelievable. And he was in the end zone, and he left people gasping in the press box, and that's almost normal. You have come to expect that almost every week. First, it was a couple of years ago. He started leaping over players. Now everybody in college football is trying to do that. Um, but these spin moves are unreal, and his ability to prolong plays and to break tackles and to be a complete player. Is he a Heisman candidate? I think on the odds boards he's like the in sixth place as far as being a favorite to get there. I think a legitimate goal is for him to get to New York City for that program. He's the third yardage wise. He's the third leading rusher in the country as far as yards. Um, He's got 17 touchdowns total. I believe that's the number. Maybe he's also got a couple of receiving, which puts him in the top three in the country as far as touchdowns scored. But the big thing with him is his uh, otherworldly plays, and he's got a highlight film about 10 of them that he's had this year that are just unlike almost anybody else in the country. But it's a quarterback's award, has been mostly this century anyway. I think there's only been three running backs that have won it in the last 25 years. But I think it's a legitimate hope that he gets to New York City. Uh, but in the last two games, he would have to do something just otherworldly to get really serious contention to win that thing.
Got to ask you, Judge, now that you've had a chance to see the majority of the season after that 0-2 start, did Notre Dame, in hindsight, play their two toughest opponents and just fell short? Or are they a better football team now that they're winning games? It's not about the competition. And if they were to play those two games over, would we have a different result and why?
Well, you know what I'm going to say. It's a little bit of both because Notre Dame has definitely improved. They figured some things out. In that first game, they were so vanilla in the offense, trying to get CJ Carr acclimated to his first ever start. And they end up losing to Miami by 3 points. A close game that actually they had to come back in to make it that close to truth be told, but they had an opportunity. They had the ball and an opportunity to get the lead at the end of the game with time on the clock. A&M, I've contended, was a game Notre Dame never should have lost. They controlled that game almost the entire time until almost literally the last play of the game, a play that I was standing about 20 feet away from, right down in the end zone, uh, when A&M scored that last touchdown. And you can say what you want about missed calls on that. Everybody saw the tackle of Donovan Heinisch as he was just about to sack the quarterback. But those plays happen. Notre Dame was really close in that game, and I think they controlled most of that game. They did lose by 1 point to A&M. Interesting game for A&M yesterday, to
Yeah.
say the least, but they survived, and every team has those kind of games. I think A&M has improved more as the season has gone on. I'd love to play both of those teams again. I have no doubt that I will. I'm not going to say I have no doubt, but I really think Notre Dame would probably at least split those two games if they got to play those two teams again.
Judge, always enjoy your insights. Give us a real quick how to find you and follow Fighting Irish Preview.
We are everywhere. Instagram, go to Instagram. My team is doing some amazing things on Instagram. But look for Fighting Irish Preview on Instagram, YouTube. The YouTube channel's got some good stuff, and of course, fightingirishpreview.com. You can also look us up on X, especially if you want to follow me. I think I'm entertaining. At least some people have told me that during the games. I like to, in real time, I'll send out 20, 30 tweets during the game just about my instant reaction to certain stuff going on. So X and you can also look us up on Facebook. We're very active there on the Fighting Irish Preview Facebook page.
Always appreciate you. Get some rest, and we'll be looking forward to talking to you down the road.
Great to talk to you, Brett.
Yeah.
Anytime.
Appreciate the time. That is the Judge Phil Houk joining us here on the Sports Rush, our live edition. Of course, maybe we should just go ahead and jump to our next guest because Dylan Sinn from the Journal Gazette's joining us now. And you just heard some of the final comments. And so I'm going to ask you, Notre Dame gets a redo against Texas A&M and Miami. Same result at this point in the season, or was it just the timing of when those two teams played each other?
Yeah, I agree with Phil. I think they would get at least one of them. I think they would beat Miami. Texas A&M, like Phil said, has gotten a lot better. Just like Notre Dame has. I do think that some of the big plays in the pass game that Notre Dame gave up in that A&M game might be solved a little bit, especially with Tay Johnson back there and Leonard Moore healthy, neither of which was the case when Notre Dame played A&M the first time. You have to feel pretty good about their chances in that game as well. So I would not be surprised Notre Dame was 2-0 in those games if they played them again today. But those are still two good teams. It would be good games, and hey, we might see one of them come January. It's not out of the realm of possibility.
While we're talking about comparisons and the state of teams at this point in the season, your rankings. Ohio State still number one, and do they deserve that based on their play this year or the fact that they came into the season as the king of the hill and nobody's knocked them off?
Yeah, I think that they are still number one for me. I think that they deserve it for this year just because of how efficient they've been. They've beaten up just about everybody. Even that Texas game, they won by one score, but that game was not particularly close. Texas got a score at the end to make it look more respectable. Ohio State hasn't even really been challenged all season. Now, they haven't played a ton of great teams. They beat Washington pretty easily. They beat Texas pretty easily. We'll see them against Michigan in a couple of weeks. I fully expect them to win that game. But yeah, they are to me the most efficient, most talented, the highest ceiling team in the country, possibly highest ceiling and lowest floor, which is it's a pretty formidable combination. And so we'll have to see. Again, they haven't played anyone super elite yet. They haven't played anyone of Indiana's caliber. But we will get to find out probably in the Big Ten championship game in 3 weeks, which would be extremely exciting.
After what we saw from Texas A&M yesterday, that's a pretty bold statement to say Ohio State's got the greatest extremes because we've seen Texas A&M look like no one's beating them, and yesterday it looked like they were going to go down in a big way to South Carolina. With that comeback, did that earn a position or the fact that the game was that close and they were capable of falling behind 30-3, did that drop them? I wonder how people read that because depending on your perspective, right? I mean, either it's a team that's capable of overcoming a 30-3 deficit or it's a team that's capable of falling behind 30-3. What do you look at it as?
Yeah, I mean, it's really tough, right? It's kind of the way you feel about Indiana last week, a little bit less of an extreme, right? Where it's like, all right, you beat this team and you came back and won. You had this great drive at the end against Penn State, but you were also behind in the fourth quarter against a team that was 3-5, right? So how do you look at it? I think you can look at it as a team that's resilient but flawed, which I think is what Texas A&M is. I think a lot of it is on the shoulders of Marcel Reed, their quarterback, who had just an awful first half. He looked like he should have thrown about 5 interceptions in that half. Didn't know where he was going with the ball, and then looked like a Heisman Trophy candidate in the second half. It just a performance from him that is kind of head scratching. It's like, how do you go from looking that poor to looking that good. And it's more one of those things that like what team is going to show up on a given night. And I think Texas A&M, as you said, extremely high variance, and they're capable of beating anyone. They're also capable of losing to about half the teams in the SEC. So we'll have to see how that plays out.
You brought up Heisman Trophy, and I just talked to Judge Phil about this. Jeremiah Love, I think he's such a difference maker. And, if the Heisman wasn't the Heisman and it was an MVP, I think you could look at Jeremiah Love a little different. I don't know that he's the best player in college football, but I do think he's one of the more important ones because of the plays he makes for Notre Dame. Um, do you have him as a guy that could be in New York? I mean, I don't think he's going to win, but I do think he has earned some discussion. I just don't know how much.
Yeah, I absolutely think he deserves some discussion. I think he could absolutely be in New York. For my money, he's the best player in the country. Like you said, with if it's an MVP, I think he probably wins it. He's just so dynamic. And his stats are up there with the best in the country, and probably would be the best in the country if not for something that Phil talked about, which was Notre Dame really trying in that first game against Miami to get CJ Carr in a rhythm and going away from Jeremiah Love. I think if they give Jeremiah Love 20, 25 carries in that game, first of all, they probably win the game. And second of all, Jeremiah Love probably has 1,500 or more total yards and leads the country in that category. So I think he's the best player in the country. If you were giving me every player in college football to draft to a college football team, I'm probably taking Jeremiah Love first. Maybe Jeremiah Smith would work his way in there. Fernando Mendoza would be in there. Julian Sayin would be in there. But I'm taking Jeremiah Love first. I think he is just so good and does so much for you. I mean, there was that play yesterday against Pitt where it's 4th and 2. Notre Dame gives him the ball and the play is stuffed. There's nowhere for him to go. And he just bounces it outside because he's so much better than everyone else and picks up the first down on a play that had no business working. He is a problem solver in the best way for Notre Dame.
Who do you have? You've just mentioned you think he should be considered for the Heisman, but if you were a betting guy and you were to bet on somebody, who do you think right now is the Heisman Trophy winner?
It's hard. I think it's going to be whoever wins the Big Ten championship. That team's quarterback would be my guess. If IU wins it, Mendoza's going to cruise. If Ohio State wins it, I think Sayan probably wins, but it's probably pretty close. And there might be some other guys that could get in there. I think it probably comes down to the Big Ten title game. Whoever wins that game, you're going to be able to see one of those quarterbacks is probably going to have a big day to put their team over the top. And that's going to be what voters remember when they go and turn in their ballot.
I was wondering when the ballots were due, so they will get a chance to see the
Yeah,
conference championship game.
they are due. If I remember correctly, they're due the week, like middle of the week after the conference championship games.
Because the Heisman gets awarded 1 week after the conference championship game.
Yes, I think they're due like maybe like a couple of days before. I'll have to look at it, but it's like the Monday or Tuesday of before the
Okay.
the announcement is made.
Because I wasn't sure if it ended when the regular season ended or if they would have a chance to see that.
Yeah,
Okay, Ohio on your ballot, Ohio State number one. Who's number two?
I have Indiana number 2. Yeah, I think the way it's played out this season, I think those are pretty clearly the two best teams in the country. I think you could put Georgia in there as maybe the third one. But those teams to me are pretty clearly the two best, and they've played the most consistently excellent football the whole season through.
All right, you're heading to college basketball now. So you've gone from football to basketball. We can talk to you about everything, and I do want to talk because Ohio State, it didn't seem to matter how they played football wise or how dominant they won games. Um, they were number one, right? They were just put in. They're the defending champs. They're number one until someone knocks them off. Purdue obviously didn't have that luxury. They 1 week in and they're saying, oh, that wasn't a big enough win against Oakland. And probably true, but you're playing without Trey Kaufman-Renn. That's a pretty important player for the Purdue Boilermakers with the experience and the talent that he brings to the floor. I know Purdue is deep, and that's one of, I think, the real strengths of this Purdue team. But I'm sitting here right now watching Houston Auburn in the background, and Houston does have a small lead, but in your mind, is should Purdue have been knocked out of the number one spot based on the result against Oakland? They won the game.
Yeah, so I am also a college basketball voter, and so I am one of the people who dropped Purdue from the rank from number one, and I also dropped Houston pretty significantly. So I had actually UConn number one this week, and I feel pretty good about that after they beat BYU the other day. What concerned me about Purdue was not the size of the victory over Oakland. It was that, first of all, 2 games in a row, especially early, they looked poor on defense. And that was something that I didn't think Trey Kaufman-Renn was going to fix, because he's a great player. But he is not like a shut down the world defender at power forward. And so that was something that Matt Painter said after the game against Oakland, was they have a lot of skill on this team, Purdue does, and he wants his guys to work on defense as much as they work on their offensive skill. He was very clearly displeased with the way they played. And so that was something that really stuck with me when I was making my rankings, was Matt Painter was not happy with this. And so I needed to see it against Alabama. They obviously showed it to me. It was a fantastic performance for them on the road against what I think is a very, very good team. So they'll move back up for me this week. But it is one of those things where I needed to see it. Trey Kaufman-Renn came back. They showed it that was the ceiling we can see from this team, which is obviously one of the best in the country.
It's interesting because I think Purdue's defense has to adjust, because you have Lawyer, Braden Smith, and not necessarily TKR, because it's a different type of player that he guards, but especially the two guards, Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer, who have always been able to pressure on the perimeter without a concern that that would result in a drive to the basket, because it seemed like Purdue's always had rim protection. They've always had somebody, and Trey Kaufman-Renn provided that last year, Zach Edey before that. And maybe without TKR, even though he might not be the greatest man-to-man defender, just having him knowing the other personnel and when he needed to help and what position he needed to be in. And let's face it, Purdue wasn't great defensively last year, but they're able to score enough points to overcome it. I'm not going to debate that Purdue didn't look like the best team in the country after 1 week, but I also think 1 week's a pretty snap judgment, which is also another reason why I don't like preseason polls. I really don't like them. I mean, if you're going to put Purdue number one before you even see a game, then don't be so critical when you see 1 or 2 samples, right?
Sure.
That's kind of the way I feel. All right, Indiana, they've really delivered in three games. They've been everything I think Indiana fans would hope they could be. Um, let's go ahead and get a snap judgment. After I say don't make one, we're going to make one. Is this team for real?
I can't think of a reason they wouldn't be. Let's put it that way. Like obviously they've only played one power conference team, and we don't know how good Marquette's going to be. Marquette has a lot of players that are stepping into new roles. We get that, right? But Indiana, to me, just has all the hallmarks of a team that's good, right? They share the ball, they shoot it well, they play hard on defense. They're not always perfect on defense. And I think that if they when they lose games this year, it will be because they don't defend well enough for 40 minutes. And that seems to be the thing they're working on. But they play hard on defense. I don't think the defensive issues they've had, to the extent they've had them, are because of effort. So they play hard, they share the ball, they move the ball, they shoot it well, they rebound it pretty well, better than I thought they would. Frankly, I thought that was going to be a weakness, and it hasn't been so far this season. And they have a lot of guys with a lot of skill who can do a lot of different things. And it to me is, yeah, it's early and it is a snap judgment. But we've all watched college basketball for many years, right? This is a team that looks like a good team. This is what a good team looks like. And maybe that won't be the case in a month or so. Maybe we'll look back and be like, boy, I don't know what happened. But this is what a good team looks like. And so we'll see if that continues. But right now, it's about as good of a start as you could have asked for.
I've been impressed with, and again, I'm thinking if they're better than we maybe expected at this point, that means somebody has probably been better than we thought they would be. And the guy with 2 first names and 2 last names, Bailey Reed Bailey, that to me, that's the kid that I think his versatility, his inside outside. I guess I didn't know enough about him to know what to expect, and I've been impressed with because I think he's exactly what basketball in 2025 needs to look like.
Yeah, I mean, I was really impressed the other night when they won the other night. He was like bringing the ball up the court as like basically like I got the rebound, I'm going with it, right? And they like that's something that Trace Jackson Davis used to do and was really effective for IU. It's not like he's actually running the break, but he's getting the ball across half court and getting you into offense before the defense can really get set, rather than like bringing down a rebound. You have to look for the point guard, and you got to get him the ball, and then everything is a little bit slower, right? And like that's really important. I think it's not just Reed Bailey. I think it's Sam Alexis too. It's that center combination. We're going into the season. Even Darren DeVries had kind of said, "Well, the position where we're a little bit weaker is in the middle." Right? Like this was a team that I thought was going to score a lot of points and give up a lot of points because they didn't really have anyone on defense to stop people in the middle. And I think Bailey and Alexis combined, they play about 20 minutes a game each. And I think Bailey and Alexis combined have been really good at first of all at defense and second of all at rebounding in ways that I didn't think they were going to be. And so they're much more effective as a center combination than I think even Darren DeVries thought we were going to have this year.
It's going to be very interesting, Dylan. I talked about this earlier before you joined us. One of the challenges in today's day and age is when you have a position like Darian DeVries had coming into Indiana and having to build an entire roster. You want a bunch of alphas. You want guys that were the stars on their teams previously and come together collectively to provide a talented group at Indiana. But you also risk a certain amount of culture and chemistry. I mean, it's tough to go from being an alpha to being one of a litter of 12, right? And and so far it looks good. Indiana's winning, but sometimes you lose a couple of games and the real spots are exposed. And I guess what's been the key to this group seemingly accepting all of their roles and playing what I think looks like really good team basketball.
Yeah, I mean, I've been shocked by it, frankly. The ability, like, not just that they're playing this level of team basketball. I thought they might get there at some point this season because there is so much skill on this team, but to do it so quickly, to do it right away with a team that, as you said, has so many new players, that to me has been frankly shocking. How far ahead of schedule they are. But I think it speaks to the job that Darren DeVries did in the transfer portal, going to get players who were going to be willing to sacrifice for the team, right? Like Tayton Connerway was the Sun Belt Player of the Year last season. He was the go-to scorer for Troy when they made the NCAA tournament a couple of years ago. And in the first couple of games this season, he didn't really do anything as a scorer. He was content to fade into the background, let Lamar Wilkerson and Tucker DeVries do what they do, play good defense, and move the ball. And then when IU needed him to score the other night, he went out and scored a whole bunch of points because he can do that too. And so it's that ability to be like, all right, sometimes it's going to be my night, sometimes it's not. And realizing when it is your night, it's time to go score, and when it's not, it's time to move the ball, hit the shooter who's in rhythm, find a cutter, and just keep it moving. And the ability to kind of toggle between those things has been really impressive for IU so far.
The freshman that's going to ultimately have the bigger impact on his respective team, Jack Benter or Trent Sisley?
Do you mean this season or in their career?
Oh, well, let's answer both. I was talking about this season, but let's
Okay.
go ahead and answer both because I think I know where you're asking your question and
Yes.
why it might be a little different
Yes.
just because of the amount of minutes. But I mean, I've been impressed with both these guys. I
Yes.
almost to the level that I didn't expect it because I thought Purdue was too deep for Benter to jump up where he has in the rotation, even getting into the starting lineup. Trent Sisley, um, again, when you bring in all these highly ranked transfers to have a guy that just kind of finds his way into the rotation. So, but I think it's a fair question, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. No, I would say this year, I think it might be Benter this season. Because I think he's going to get minutes at the 3 and the 4 because of his passing ability. He's such a good passer. He played some point guard in high school, and there are going to be times where Purdue plays with Daniel Jacobson, who's 7'4" at the 5, Trey Kaufman-Renn, who's 6'9" at the 4, and Jack Benter, who's like 6'8" at the 3. It's going to be a really, really interesting lineup. I'm excited to see that. I think he can make a real impact as both the backup to Trey Kaufman-Renn and to Fletcher Lawyer at the 3. I think both of those he can carve out 15, 20 minutes a game. Sisley, I think, is going to be a fantastic player, like an all Big Ten, possible All American level player in the long run. I think he's a little bit away from that now. I think he'll have some games this year where he kind of flashes and it's like, oh, I can see where this is going. But I think he's probably not going to make quite as much of an impact this year just because of how veteran IU's lineup is and how much Darren DeVries is going to want to lean on Tucker and Lamar, who both play the same position as Sisley. So I would say Benter this year, Sisley for the long term, even though I think Benter's going to have a fantastic career too.
Who's the favorite in the Big Ten?
I still think it's Purdue. If after that win over Alabama, I think it's Purdue. I think that they are the deepest team. I think that they have the best player with Braden Smith. I think you could have convinced me that Michigan is going to get up there, but they've looked a little bit iffy in some games, and they are not quite as cohesive yet as Purdue. I think that's because they have a lot of new pieces, right? Purdue, the pitch on them was that they were really familiar with one another. We've seen that already this season, especially on offense. So I think it's Purdue. I think Michigan is probably still second, although Michigan State seems like they have a lot of veteran guys who really know how to play together as well. So they could crop up there as well. And I'm really excited to see this race play out because I think there's going to be a lot of teams in this conference that get better as the season goes on because they have a lot of new pieces.
Always enjoy talking to you, Dylan. I'm going to let you focus on other and more important things to get you. Are you West Lafayette bound, I assume?
I am there right now. I am in West Lafayette right now, and so I will be heading over to Mackey Arena here just as soon as I get off with you. Looking forward to it.
All right. We'll enjoy your coverage and go ahead and throw in your X handle and the way to follow you tonight with your Purdue coverage.
That's right. I am at Dylan Sinn, DYLANSINN on X, and I will be tweeting there during the game. So looking forward to following along with you guys.
I think Akron's a really good mid-major for Purdue to schedule, but I don't know that it's a great matchup for Akron. Personnel-wise, there may be some issues with Akron trying to match up with Purdue.
Yeah, it's a little tough. They've won 20 games 4 years in a row. They won the MAC last year, 28 wins last season. So Purdue likes to play teams that are the best team in their respective conference. That's a big thing for Matt Painter. And this is one of those. And so I wouldn't be surprised if Akron hung around for 10, 15 minutes. But I think Purdue probably just has too much for them tonight would be my guess.
Yep. All right. We appreciate you so much. Thanks, Dylan. Have a good night. Dylan Sinn joining us here on the Sports Rush. So, yeah, that was awesome. Okay, so we have to talk about it. Earlier this week, Purdue Fort Wayne women got the huge win at home at the Gates Center. Now, imagine you get a building that holds 1,800 max. You get a crowd of almost 1,200, excuse me, that comes in to your home. Purdue is not used to playing in those types of environments. They're not used to having fans that are actually sitting right along the floor. And this Purdue Fort Wayne team under Maria Marchesano, and I can tell you that even she did not think this team would be ready for a Big Ten opponent this early in the season because you're bringing in so many different pieces from NAIA, from transfers, from red shirts, from players that didn't get significant time on the court last year to players that were role players that have to be impact players this season. I mean, there were so many moving parts to this group. And I think I had more confidence that she would be there than she had in herself. But the reality is, and she was very confident this team was going to get there, that it was a good enough team that by Horizon League schedule time that this team would be competing. But playing Purdue 3 games into the season was just going to be a really, really monster task. And I think this team proved something to itself on the road at Xavier when they came back. They stormed back from 10 down in the fourth quarter and should have forced overtime, but had a toe on the line on a 3-pointer at the buzzer that would have tied it. And I think they were very confident going into that game. And, you take a good coach with a confident team, with a team that does have some talent, and good things can happen. And a big thing happened. This is one of those nights that will be remembered forever by the people that were there, with Purdue, the mighty Boilermakers, coming into the Gate Center and taking a loss at the hands of Purdue Fort Wayne. 68-67, a three-pointer from a freshman with 5 seconds left to get the win for the Mastodons. Just an incredible night. Meanwhile, wasn't such an incredible night for the men. And, early on, you look at the men's roster and you're thinking, okay, it's still a work in progress. There's some guys that are still trying to gel and figure out their roles. And, the tough thing is you have a player that puts up 23 points and then he thinks he can, score anytime that the team needs a bucket. Sometimes that's true. Sometimes it's not. And they've got to learn how to react to different adverse situations. And the best way the Mastodons have always reacted to adverse situations is space the floor, share the ball, keep it moving, and then take advantage of a defense that gets out of position or creates space and holes. And they didn't do that. They rushed things and tried to attack quickly, ended up driving right into triple teams, still trying to force up shots. And I think that, one of the great things about making mistakes like this in the third or fourth game of the season is that you're able to look at film and you learn from it. And you can quickly then start to grow and be better when you face those situations again. And I think that's what's going to happen with this Mastodon squad is they're going to learn from some of the mistakes they made, and they made plenty of them in the second half against Western Michigan. That's a game that I still feel the Dons should have won, and they didn't because they became a alternate version of themselves. And I think if they would have stuck with what they do, and when they did that in the first half, they built a 13-point lead. They were up 37-24. And then Western got some momentum heading into the locker room with the last 8 points of the first half, and they continued that momentum throughout the entire second half. And the Dons just, as Coach Kaufman would say, smoked like a salmon in that second half. But a lot of it was self-inflicted. They did things that weren't characteristic. Tried to play hero ball when they didn't need to play hero ball. And I think that's one of the things. You go back to the film and you look at this game and you say, okay, we built a 37-24 lead. Here's how we did it. And you look at the differences between what you did in building that lead and then when Western had their little run, how did you react to that? And look at how you changed. And you shouldn't change. You should keep doing what you do that's successful, because eventually, over a 40-minute game, if you're successful consistently with what you're doing offensively, you should be able to get enough stops to win that basketball game. But they broke the mold on what they were doing offensively. As a result, Western took advantage, got out and ran. They were able to beat the Dons on on Western's offensive end because the Dons then didn't play as good a defense. Sometimes offense turns to defense because when you're scoring, you're getting back, they're taking the ball out of the net, and there's a whole different mindset on the defensive end. The Dons just didn't do it in the second half. So let that be a lesson. I don't know that you learn much other than, you pick up a win and everybody plays, and defeating a team like Boyce, and nothing against Boyce, but, they compete at a different level. And the job for the Mastodons was to give everybody some experience, get some chemistry, work some more together. And that was accomplished in a rather easy win, 118-68 over Boyce. But now they go on the road and they got two tough ones. They got Utah and they got St. Louis. Now, if the Dons play to their potential, they got a chance to stay in the game against Utah. They really do. I mean, I've watched a couple of Utah games. I've watched pieces of today and saw one of them live earlier this week. And that's a Utah team that I think the Dons can match up with. I think they can play with. And Weber State had Utah on the ropes earlier this week. And I think the Mastodons could could go out there and get a win if they do things their way. But if they start doing it, as individuals, as heroes, they're not going to get it done. And then they go on to St. Louis, and it looks like the St. Louis team is really going to be solid this year. So it's going to be a tough road trip. 2 on the road this week for the Mastodons. Of course, you can always listen. 1380 The Fan. We've got radio coverage on Tuesday, stream coverage coming up on Friday in the game against St. Louis. And then the Dons will return home for a couple of games the following week on Tuesday and Friday at Chicago State and Holy Cross coming in to the Gate Center. All right, we're going to wrap it up. We've hit our hour point, and at 1 hour, I like to keep things tight. So Adam Lundy, by the way, couldn't join today. He was doing some Christmas decorating. And so he was away decorating some businesses for Christmas. So he'll be all festive next time we have him on, hopefully next Sunday. But I do thank you for joining us. I thank everybody who tunes in, everybody who retweets, everybody who subscribes. Make sure you like. Always appreciate you. And thanks so much for your support here for the Sports Rush. Have a terrific Sunday night. Have a great week. And we will talk to you about a week down the road. Thanks so much.